Good morning, Nigeria, once again, and welcome to Daybreak on Trust Television. That is, if you're just joining us at the hour. It's that time in the show where we indeed take a deep dive, as said by my co-anchor, where we have in the studio an analyst who would dissect and provide perspectives on all of the issues that have been captured by the various national newspapers in Nigeria. And I have the honor at this point, indeed, to introduce our guest analyst this morning, a friend of the house and a former boss, if you like, from whose umbrella some of us learned some of our traits in journalism. I have the honor to introduce the editor-in-chief of Dateline newspaper, and I'm talking about no other than Malem Nasrullah. It's a pleasure to have you in the studio.
Thank you for having me.
And Barka Destala, I was hoping you would hold my chicken pack when you walked into the studio this morning, but I think we can always catch up on that.
Exactly.
And as usual, we will start with the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. It's a bumper pack. If you don't have a copy, I think you should start reaching out to your vendors at this hour. And the major headline is keeping pace with the activities in the national polity yesterday, and I'm sure it had everybody talking. Yeah. And here it says, to save governance, Buhari orders Amechi Malemi, 7 other ministers to quit. Mwajuba Akpabio complies. Others weigh options. Section 84, subsection 12, unconstitutional, says the appeal court. That was another major development yesterday. And ministers using state resources to campaign. That is according to Daily Trust investigation. And you have the story, the pictures of some of the major contenders for the seats of their masters or other positions therein in the state. And before we take comments from guest analysts, we would run through the other major headlines. And directly below the major headlines and the picture is the belt, strip in the black background, is NJC forestall conflicting rulings, issues guideline on election matters. You'll find that story on page 4, and very quickly to the top right-hand corner, directly below the name marks, you have Lagos Ibadan rail link to port stalls. CCECC demands 124 billion naira balance. You'll find that story on page 22, and next to it, it's strike. Gambari meets ASU today as student protest at APC Secretariat. You also have the painful story from the killing of the Al Jazeera's a journalist, one of us, who was covering the incidents around the Gaza Strip. Israeli killing of Al Jazeera's Shireen Abu Akleh sparks outrage, according to the Daily Trust. And you find that story on page 4. And crack among PDP governors over presidential tickets. That's on page 14. And of course, over 40 persons killed during Salah break in Taraba. That's according to the senator representing that side. We'll start off with a major headline, what seemed to have taken over all gossip centers in Nigeria this morning, the story of the directive by the president to members of his cabinet, which does appear like a bombshell yesterday. From the way the day started, none of us had anticipated that it was going to end, if you like, on an interesting note, as it did, with now more than half of his cabinet set to quit. What's your perspective on what had happened yesterday?
Well, is it up to half of the members?
Well,
I don't think it's...
besides the president, a lot of them are not in senatorial and gubernatorial ambition.
Certainly, but so many people actually expected this to
have happened
long ago, because honestly, you cannot combine the two. Looking for the delegates' support and then also running governance. Honestly, I don't think it's something that you can do effectively. One will have to suffer. So what the president did, as far as I'm concerned, is the right thing to do, even though some of the ministers are actually trying to circumvent the process already. You can see from what the labor minister is saying that he will need more clarification from the president. This is the president that has the powers to hire and fire. It doesn't have to do with your constitutional right. He was the one who appointed you in the first place, and this is what he is now telling you, that if you have an ambition, why don't you just drop the ball so that you take care of whatever ambition you have. But there are also others who are not sure of what will happen in the long run. So they are still like dilly-dallying. They don't know, should I continue with it or should I resign? Because if you resign, then that means you are like foregoing all the perks of governance and what have you.
Privileges.
So I think what the president did is the right thing, and the ministers should also comply.
Yeah, talking about the writing, before my co-anchor comes in, the speed with which some of the ministers resigned yesterday, it appeared like they were anticipating it. It was like, it spoke clearly to the fact that they probably had even abandoned administration. And so when the decision came, it was easy to have just thrown in the papers. They didn't seem to have struggled much. Is this what we should have expected?
Yeah, well, you should know what you are going for, and then you should know the best way to go about it. Like what the Minister of State for Education did, there were actually reports saying that he actually resigned way back. Some were saying, I think, on April 28th. He bought the form on the 27th, and then they said he tendered his resignation a day after. But probably because he didn't want to put his colleagues under pressure, maybe he didn't let that out, or he was not able to get the acknowledgement of the president. Probably that was why he stayed back and couldn't announce it earlier. But now that some of them have started coming out to say that they are no longer in the Federal Executive Council, I expect all those who have one or two ambitions to also do the same. And this should not stop at the level of just the cabinet members. You have heads of agencies, you have so many others that are also interested in running for one office or the other. So they should also, I think, resign so that governance will not suffer.
And now, for those cabinet members that seem to be digging their heels and not wanting to budge, what does that say about their credibility?
Well, it's like they don't know what they are after. Probably they're even in the race, not of their own making. Probably they are being pushed by some people to do it. But if you are your own man, you should be able to know what you want. I saw so many of them saying we will have to go back to our constituents to even raise the money. Like, see what the Labour Minister was even saying. He said he budgeted 50 million naira for the form. And then in the end, it cost 100 million naira. And then he's now saying he will have to go back to his people to raise the balance. Actually, I just learned this morning that he's even yet to actually pay for the form. So, and you are still talking about being in the race, you know, you have not bought the form. It's like they are not even serious, and they shouldn't be taken as such.
Amazing. Well, then yesterday we saw the court ruling on Section 84. What is the implication of this ruling on all of the developments around 2023?
Yes, so many papers are reporting it in a light that maybe slightly differs from my own understanding. Okay. So many are saying they have rejected the bill or something like that. But my own understanding of it is the fact that the only thing that they did was to say that the person who went to court over that matter has no reason to do that because he has not shown how he will be affected by it.
Or connected.
But if you look at the substance of that suit, which is to say that that section is against the Constitution, the appeal court actually upheld that. So probably because of this, I will not be surprised, rather, if some of the ministers will want to stay back and see what maybe the Supreme Court will want to decide. But like I said earlier, since the president is now telling you, if you have ambition, just resign so that you face your ambition. That is what they should do.
No, well, I think I have an idea of where you might be leaning towards, but I just need to ask it directly. Section 84, so Section 12, what is your own perspective on it? Are you for it? Are you against it?
Well,
as a Nigerian,
I think I'm against it.
Okay.
Because you are like trying to say some category of individuals shouldn't be allowed to also run. Like, see what is happening with the vice president. Because he was elected, he is not affected by the directive of the president. But the others who were appointed by the president, they are now being affected. So why should the law discriminate?
Okay.
They are basically doing the same thing. If the vice president is going around the country trying to get one support or the other, it means along the way, state materials, state resources are also, being used. So the same thing with what we are saying about the ministers. So like the Constitution said, whoever is interested in any position, maybe should resign amount to it. so that there is no discrimination.
Including the vice president.
Even the vice president.
Don't you also think that if we have to wait to get to that point, they would have deeply engulfed the state resources before they pull out? At such point, they would have basically achieved their...
Probably we may need to have a new law, that will specify all that, so that maybe even if you are going for a second term, at a point you have to resign. It should be across board, not just singling out some people and then allowing others to benefit. Honestly, I don't think that is how the law should work. We are all equal before the law, and we should be treated as such.
While we're still on that matter, I'd just like to get your take on this. A lot of people of the opinion that the president's directive that came yesterday there for these appointees to resign is a little bit too late.
Well, if we are looking at the content of the law that is now in contention, well, I think it's late, because if the court should rule that what the National Assembly did is the right thing, then so many contestants will be affected, because they have not met the provisions of the law.
So it's a double whammy for people who are going. Slightly shifting away from that issue is what we saw with the Israeli killing of the Al Jazeera journalists. Being one yourself and a member of the Global Guild of Editors, how did this news hit you yesterday?
Honestly, it's quite unfortunate, and it also speaks to the hazard, in the profession. But what I found hard to believe was the fact that, she was donned in her press vest and what have you, clearly showing that this is a journalist. And actually, the Israeli forces, they have not taken responsibility, but they have admitted the fact that they actually fired the shots that may have led to her death. And you can see probably the United States of America may have to come out strongly in this case, because the person affected is also a citizen of the United States of America. Unlike some people may think if she is only maybe a Palestinian or an Arab, she may not have the support of the United States of America. But this is something that actually journalists around the world should condemn, because whatever affects one, will actually, it's either it has already affected you in a way, or if you allow it to continue, then you may also,
But is this, beyond admitting or explaining the circumstances around her death, is it a failure of understanding the rules of engagement? She has always covered this war. And that is on the one part of it. On the other, we also have Nigerians who contend with this kind of things daily. You go to cover conflict, and one part of the conflict fails, you have given unjust publicity to the other, or even the government not being happy that you bring these issues to the fore in the first place. How do they understand the role of a journalist in conflict reporting?
Well, during war situations, like they usually say, truth is actually the first casualty. So many of these actors, they don't want their activities reported. So if, as a journalist, you want to cover conflict situations, I think there are two ways to go about it. It's either you go on your own, or you get embedded by one of the parties. If you are embedded, then certainly there is a limit to what you can do, because you may even have to clear your materials before getting them out there. But if you are going on your own, then the first thing that they will tell you is, we cannot guarantee your safety. And that is, in a way, trying to tell you that if you do something that we don't like, then we can take you out. So honestly, it's actually a double jeopardy for journalists. And actually, the thing is, what journalists are doing is very important. So it's something that we just have to continue despite all the hazard.
So could we see a gradual reluctance now on the part of journalists to cover conflicts?
Certainly, it will affect so many people. You said, one thing I remember some of our bosses saying, we don't like heroes. Anytime you see that your life is in danger, try to see what you can do to get out of that danger. Don't say because you just want to perform your role, you are also putting yourself in danger, because you have to be alive to be able to do anything.
Painful, very painful. And today we are hearing from the senator representing Taraba that over 40 persons were killed while we were celebrating the Salah, a period in our nation history where we had just come out from fasting, from a moment of supplication and renewal. How it appears the Taraba case is gradually escalating. We saw a bomb blast go off yesterday, I think it was, close to a military base, which clearly samples an attempt to take down a military formation. Should we be worried by these pockets of attack in Taraba?
Certainly we should be worried because, like you said, Taraba State, because maybe it doesn't get all the newspaper, the coverage that it deserves. So many things are actually happening without them being reported. So I even saw somewhere that actually the people that were killed should be around 100 or so. And sometimes you actually believe that because sometimes the government is not like happy when the actual figures are reported because they think they might cause some reprisals and what have you. But this is not the first time it is happening, and it's gradually becoming like a pattern. They do this, and then the government will condemn. They do it again tomorrow, and then the government. How long can we continue things like this? The government should come out and stamp its authority, because without security, there is.
Is it that the Taraba situation is defiling solutions? It's gradually becoming a Kaduna of sorts. We are now getting to the level where we want to normalize these killings in Taraba, just as we do in Kaduna. If it happens this day and you're around where the news break and they say, where is it? Oh, no, it's Kaduna, it's normal. What can we do? Should it be a government-led approach or a community-led approach? Because it does appear like the Taraba situation is unique. It's more like an ethnic or communal conflict rather than an invasion from outside, as we have in the case of Kaduna. What should be the best approach?
Actually, all these terrorists are actually latching on this, to also perpetrate their evil. Because in Taraba State, I actually served in Taraba State like 20 years or so back. And so I know the terrain, and you get all these pockets of, communal clashes and what have you. But they don't get to this level most of the time. So probably the government needs to pay more attention to things that are happening in Taraba State now, because the fact that they have not been happening on this scale, does not mean they don't happen at all. And now that they are happening almost on constantly, so I think the government should worry, and we also should worry. And like you said, the approach should not just be for the government alone. Even the communities, who are the first beneficiary of anything, whether it's peace or development, they should also play a role in this.
All right. Well, I like to steer us away from that and back to what we started discussing. Yeah. That is the Nigeria's polity. I mean, like, something just came in right now that I'd love to share. It says barely 24 hours after dissociating himself from moves by some groups to draft him into the 2023 presidential race, former President Goodluck Jonathan has finally made up his mind to vie for the top spot. Nigeria is set to go to the polls next year in a crowded contest parading many contestants in both the ruling APC and several opposition parties, including the main opposition PDP. Now, on May 9th, Jonathan had rejected presidential expression of interest and nomination forms bought for him by people described as nomadic Fulani pastoralists and Almajiri communities. Now, he was quoted as saying that it was an insult for people to buy the form for him without his consent, but the former president has now made a U-turn on the issue. A dependable source in Jonathan's camp, who pleaded anonymity, said the former president had indeed joined the APC formally and is having registered in his Otwoke ward in Bayelsa. And the source further said that Jonathan was expected to submit his expression of interest form of the APC and nomination form brought for him earlier this week. And according to the source, the former president has secured the support of the required number of APC delegates from across the 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory. Now, a quote here from the source revealed that several bigwigs of the party have also been calling Jonathan to pledge their loyalty and support to the former president. That is from the source in the Jonathan camp. So what is your take on this?
Already there are reports saying that even the extension by the ruling APC is actually because of the former president, so that he can actually have the chance to submit his form. But this also shows, you know, that we still have problems with our leadership recruitment process, because a former president, you know, if he has this ambition, and then he has to wait until the last minute, and then why do you even have to like deny or reject it in the first place if you know you are actually interested?
Could it be a political tactic?
Probably, because what they are saying, that some governors in the north are actually the ones pushing for his candidacy, and their argument being that the South maybe did only 4 years, and they need to balance up the remaining 4 years. But some are actually saying, no, what they are after is so that power will come back to the north after 4 years. So all sorts of things are actually being bandied around, because we have given them the opportunity to do all that. But the former president should know that there is nothing that is guaranteed in what he is trying to do. Nobody can give him full assurance that, okay, maybe if you join, you are going to emerge as the candidate of the party and subsequently maybe the president again. Because you were a former president. What you couldn't do while in power should be an idea to you that whoever is coming out with all these assurances may not be telling you the whole truth. So it's something that you should decide on your own, because like so many people are saying, because of what he did in 2015, his reputation, you know, around the globe, not just in Nigeria, people are now respecting him, because it's very unusual for African leaders to just let go of power. And this is something that he was able to do. But now that they are trying to bring him back, I don't know at what point, you know, they were able to convince him. Because for long, if you remember, PDP chieftains have been saying that he has abandoned the PDP, he has not been attending their meetings and all that. So this is something that he should have done much earlier, so that at least Nigerians will know, okay, because he has the right to do that. There is nothing in the Constitution that said, no, because you were once in the PDP, you can't go to the APC. Because if you look at the political terrain, you know, most of the politicians have been in either of the parties. So he should have followed the due process in all this.
And talking about Jonathan, have you taken time to wonder what the language would be, the campaign languages would be, should he see through this ambition? I'm talking about him or even members of the party who had cause to say terrible things about it. Is it just a case of the party members or the aspirants taking Nigerian for granted, or we should no longer believe some of the things they say?
No, I think it's both. You know, politicians. I remember one lecturer at the Bayero University, Kano. That time, I think they were having issues in Kano, and I was sent there to go and do a report. So when I went to him, the first thing he said, let me tell you the truth and then tell you politics. I said, how are the two different? He said, well, politics, what you are saying may not necessarily be true. You just say something that will put you at an advantage. And just like where Governor Umahi said, honestly, I don't know how the APC will look at Nigerians in the face, you know, and try to undo some of the things that
they said about
Jonathan.
Haven't blamed the previous administration
like they were calling him clueless.
Yes.
And then people are now asking, at what point?
Drunk. Yes.
At what point has he become now?
Where did he get the clue from?
So honestly, it's going to be a serious. Well, we'll wait and see how that happens, because we are not even sure if he will end up being the candidate. You know, we can only hazard a guess for now. But if that should happen, we'll see how they go about that. Certainly it can't be like Mohammed, because he was actually one of those, you know, who were like always throwing all the
Yeah. Interesting. Back again to the newspaper review. This time we'll be looking at the business day, a slight shift away from what the political focus of most national dailies this morning. And the major headline, a very conspicuous one at that, starts with a kicker, International Nurse Day, which is today. Nigeria can't keep nurses it needs. 7,000 nurses, midwife migrate yearly. Excuse me, this is according to the National Midwifery and Council of Nurses. We have seen, I think the medical profession has been the biggest casualty when it comes to professional migration from this country. They seem to be cutted from just about everywhere. We saw during the pandemic how some country even boldly sent representatives into this country and were conducting open recruitments to take doctors and nurses out. Are we doing enough, you know, to show that these people are needed here? Because it's not like we have a good ratio of these nurses to citizens in this country. Why has this continued unabated?
Well, there are actually so many things to say about this. The fact that those in charge, you know, usually have the opportunity of seeking medical attention outside the country, they don't really care. I think we are not even serious with issues here in this country. You are talking about nurses. You are talking about health professionals, people that you need their services, and then you are allowing them to just go like that. And if you look at even from the training level, most of these trained nurses and what have you, the government, you know, plays a role in their education. And we just allow them to do whatever they want without like maybe asking them to practice for at least 3 years before proceeding. But because we are not even sincere, we have not been doing the right thing. Somebody will just take what is meant, you know, for a whole community, and then just corner it. And before you know, people will be praising him because he can actually be sending 10,000, 20,000. If the health facilities are actually working, you may not even need him.
True.
Because like all those people going to the politicians, my wife has been delivered of a baby, you know, I have a patient in the hospital. If the hospitals are working, do you have to go to him? You don't. So all these things, honestly, it shows that we are never serious with issues in this country. We are talking about the nurses not being enough, and then still we are not even able to keep the ones that, the few ones that we have, and we have not been able to maybe make a way for others to join the profession, despite the numbers that we have.
We're talking about making a way for others to actually join the profession. ASU has been on strike for a very, very long time now. And a lot of people actually believe that this is not being taken, given the seriousness that it requires, maybe because this is coming at an election year, all the parties involved are concerned with other things. Is that your own view?
Yeah, like they said, honestly, even though I agree that some of the demands of ASU either have been overtaken by events or actually things that may not be realistic in the long run. But then, this is not the first time it's happening. And see how our employment sector works. You know, before you know it, they will be telling you, no, you are 26, you are too old for this. You are 27, you can't apply for this. And then, for no fault of yours, somebody will just, you know, wake up. Instead of doing the right thing, he will not do it. And then the universities, the lecturers will now come out and cry foul. And then, instead of like looking at the thing holistically, no, we tend to blame the lecturers for always being on strike. Sometimes you wonder, is there any other thing for them to do? Because if there is any other thing for them to do, then we can suggest that for them. So that, because we all want our kids, our brothers, our, you know, family members to be in school.
But is the strike actually, is it working? Because ASU has been going on strike for a very long time.
You know one thing with ASU leadership, they are very cantankerous. If you look at the setup, all the former presidents of ASU, I think they are part of the decision-making body. So even if you are maybe negotiating with them, they have to go back to that same. Some people see them actually as communists, so they don't actually care. It's either you do what we want, or we also will not give you what you want.
Yesterday, two developments from the same ASU strike. One was the meeting with the Senate President, where he's now saying that the 2009 decision is unrealistic. And the other is a planned meeting today with the Chief of Staff of the President. Why do we have to wait until the students are now disrupting political activities before leaders at this level find it expedient to intervene? And do you see this intervention as being a structured one, or merely just getting them to buy time and simply offload this crisis to the incoming administration?
It's actually because their interests are now being threatened. Because if all this protest should get out of hand, then there may not...
Chances are there.
Even the election may not happen. I don't want to be a prophet of doom, but then... but look at the 2000... We are talking about an agreement signed in 2009.
After nearly 10 years of negotiation.
All the governments, that have... And this is something that was done by the government, and government is supposed to be a continuum. Whether it's... Since there is an agreement on the ground, you should be able to live by that. If you want it to be revoked, why don't you bring them back to the negotiating table?
We understand that the 2009 agreement was a revoked agreement, actually. And so without implementing what was revoked, you are now calling for
another negotiation. so that's actually the problem we are having. We are not sincere about governance, like I said, in this country. Why should we be talking about, agreements that we willingly entered into? Honestly, it's not. It doesn't even speak well of governance.
Well, we're still reviewing the papers on Daybreak on Trust TV this beautiful Thursday morning. We'll take a short break right now, and when we return, the analysis of the papers continues. Stay with us.
But in a situation where you find that a look at the
not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
But I have said that.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's the newspaper review on Daybreak on Trust Television. We've been looking at all the developments in the national polity, from politics to education to what have you. The newspaper review continues at this point with our guest in the studio, Mariam Nasrullah, the editor-in-chief of Dateline newspaper. The next newspaper for review would be the National Economy. And as with the Business Day, it is strongly taking a look at issues bordering on business and the economy. And the major headline here on the National Economy is Nigeria may lose vehicle import traffic to Benin and Togo ports as Custom insists on the implementation of 15% National Automotive Council levy amidst clearing agents. protest. That has been a raging crisis in the last couple of weeks over what the custom agents appear to call a backdoor channel, a backdoor increase on the cost of importing vehicles into Nigeria, and that has caused some serious commotion around the Nigerian port. And we have another major headline on the National Economy newspaper below the picture there. We can't afford exorbitant diesel to transport products. These are distributors of the fuel tanker drivers distributors. Two major development, if you like, Madam Nasser, on our polity. Let's start with the one below by the tanker drivers. On the one hand, the NNPC is telling us that the shortages we have seen in Abuja and other major cities largely because tanker drivers took a break, as with everybody in Nigeria, and that has caused some break in supply chain management. But on the other hand, the tanker drivers are saying prepare for worst. Who should we believe, really? And they are advancing some of these issues, including having to buy diesel at very exorbitant price, which seem to be eating into their bottom line. Who should we believe at this point?
Well, clearly one of them is not saying the truth. I don't know which for now, but with time, honestly, we should be able to know who is telling the truth and who is saying otherwise. But remember what happened not long ago when the airlines, threatened to shut down. Before you know it, the NNPC even entered into an agreement that for 3 months, so that they will be buying all the fuel they need at a certain amount. Why can't you do the same thing for the tanker drivers? But because they are not directly affected in the way that they will have been affected by the aviation problem, so they are now letting it to probably remain unattended. But if the tanker drivers are telling the truth, then we should see the NNPC also coming out to maybe enter into an agreement to help them, so that because you are worried about the shortage in supply and all that. So why don't you handle that, so that maybe subsequently you can look at other issues that are hampering fuel movement in Nigeria. Another problem is the fact that, the NNPC, or government by implication, has failed to make sure that our refineries are working. We are still relying on importation to service local demands. So, and now that, the dollar is has gone haywire, you can hardly afford it without some intervention from the central bank. Honestly,
and even the central bank was saying at its last appearance at the House Committee that they don't even have an extra dollar to spare, because painfully, as we already know, or reported by the major newspapers, it's a windfall globally, but we are not partaking in that windfall, because we basically take everything we earn and plug back into subsidy payment, to the extent that since January, the NNPC has not contributed a farthing to the Federal Account Allocation Committee. But, talking about who to believe, the NNPC has also built a reputation for telling us too many things that we find very hard to believe. The last time, we had to endure nearly a 2 to 3 months difficulty in getting fuel, because every week there seemed to be one explanation, until it ended up with the Ukraine-Russia crisis. And so they took the complaints off the radar of this country, where we said to ourselves, well, at this point it will be everyone to himself and God for us all. But what does this speak to generally as a country, to come out and say we produce fuel, and then somehow 70% of what we produce is stolen right here in this country, with all the security networks and everything, and we are not able to stop all of this problem? What does this speak to the issue around the NNPC, especially given that the president is the Minister of Petroleum? Is there no way out of this quagmire?
There should be ways out of it, but are we actually following those ways? That's maybe what we should be asking. The NNPC should know that, probably because Nigerians hardly follow up on these issues, but like you said, they have made all the excuses you can think of. There is nothing on this ad that they have not said, you know, that is responsible for the shortage and things like that. But where are we? If you look at the filling stations now, the queues are back. So many people cannot buy fuel because of the same problem that we keep having. And Nigeria being, you know, like solely reliant on petrol products for our earnings, honestly, we should have done the right thing. Not just this administration, I mean, you know, right from all the governments that have, you know, passed. Because the refineries we have are not working. Even the quota we have from OPEC, we can't meet it. And then it's not as if this thing is not there. No, it's there. But some people are actually benefiting. And the government knows. Because believe me, there is no way you can be stealing something like crude oil.
And a substantial skill.
And then the government will not know. They know. But probably because they have succeeded in compromising all those who should be, you know, like
Vanguard.
The vanguard. So where are we? Honestly, this is very
Before he takes his question, let me attempt to play the devil advocate at this point.
Okay.
Why is it difficult that in the face of all of this crisis, not a single person has lost his job? Is that such a difficult thing for the principals to do, that you can't keep coming to the table with an excuse? If I am your staff and every day you send me to the field, I come back to tell you the reason why I can't generate a report. What is how do I justify keeping my job and drawing from the purse? Because despite not making money for this country, their allowances are not being owed. They take their vacations everywhere around the world. How are you able to meet those obligations without meeting your primary target? Why are they still keeping their jobs?
Well, if you're talking about that, then I think the first casualty should be the president, because he is the minister of petroleum. If we have maybe a different minister, then the president can say, okay, maybe he has not been acting the way I expect him to do. He has not been playing according to rules and what have you. But this one, you are the one in charge. So if there is a problem, you are the one to handle it. But because, you know, the president has been living in denial for quite some time. In the beginning, he said there was no subsidy. And then before you know it, you know, all government officials are all over the place telling us why we need to remove subsidy. Something that was never there. How do you remove it?
And then they succeeded in removing multiple times. And
yeah, because they came up with so many things on the recovery. Subsidy in the actual sense of the word. But like you said, because Nigerians hardly pay attention to all these things, people are allowed to continue. If you go to the refinery in Kaduna, I don't know the last time the flaring. You see the flaring, you see the last time it was there. But all those working on that same refinery, like you said, are collecting their salaries. Nothing is being owed. So honestly, it's because we are allowing people to run away with murder. That's why things like this are continuing.
Well, certain conspiracy theorists are putting forward the fact, because we discussed this with Sunday earlier, are putting forward the fact that all this scarcity is just being created as a tactic to increase fuel price without actually increasing fuel price. You understand? People actually believe that, okay, fine, if they make these things scarce enough, people will be willing to buy at any price they can get it, in as much as it's available.
Yeah, one of the places where I have a very good understanding, I think, is Kaduna State. If you go to Kaduna State, most of the major oil marketers, you will see that they are not selling. But if you go along the bypass, you know, on the expressway, if you are ready to pay 190, 200, you get fuel without any, like in few seconds, few minutes, you are able to buy your fuel. So they are actually doing that the other way, because people are now paying more for petroleum products, which the government had been trying to do unsuccessfully. So now they are coming maybe through the back way, because they are also the ones that are running these businesses, whether we like it or not. Most of these fuel companies, transport companies that you see are actually owned by people in government, or are really connected or linked to to people in government.
Interesting. One of the stories we also had to pick this morning was the stoppage of the rail line, the connection between the Apapa port and I think is it the Iduma, not Idumota now, the main rail headquarters in Ibutimeta in Lagos. A critical infrastructure that we thought would have taken care of the gridlock in Apapa by bypassing all of the limited channels that are available and straight taking those containers out of the port, in a way also reducing the congestion around the port, and also critical to the dry port infrastructure in Ibadan, which is supposed to also restrict the heavy vehicular movement into Lagos, all in a bid to go and take, now stalled because of a balance of 124 billion from the federal government. Is it that we do not have an understanding of how critical these infrastructures are, and that they should be, if you like, on some kind of first-line charge when it comes to expenditure spending, that we do all of these things? Or it's just basically the quest for 2023 taking over and pushing everything below the radar?
Actually, from the way things are going, we will be left with so many uncompleted projects. We have tried the e-call-up and so many, it's like it has defied solution. And like you said, even the cost of governance in Nigeria, there are so many things we can actually achieve if we are able to
keep cost low.
Because see what all these governors are doing. You know, they are still moving in large convoys, you know, retinue of aides that you don't even need. They are just guzzling up all the few resources that we have. And then you also expect things like this to happen. Honestly, there is no way we can achieve that with the mindset, with the happenings that...
Talking about cost of governance, we were having this conversation earlier. I mean, just look at Zamfara. Yesterday, it was distributing Cadillac vehicles, American branded Cadillac vehicles to emirs and village. And then a couple of days later, we are hearing that they had not registered a single student for WAEC. And you tell yourself which should actually take precedence, the future of the state, of the workforce, or merely providing Cadillac for a place where the roads are not passable because bandits have practically taken over government.
That's not only it, because some of all these traditional rulers, they can't even go to their domains. So what will they be using the cars for? And even if you look at it, there is a governor also, you know, that is actually running for president now. His state is one of those affected by the WAEC thing.
Yes, absolutely.
So how do you justify that? You know, you have not been able to do little things.
Very basic things.
Something that maybe all you need to do is to maybe channel the amount that you use to junket all around.
Or even buy the form, or even buy the form for...
And nobody, because politicians actually used to do that.
Yes.
And they count that as part of their achievements. I've been able to register so many students for WAEC, and it's quite unfortunate.
You know, maybe some people actually believe, maybe that's why some of these people that are currently in power right now are unable to really come up with some sort of manifesto as to what they plan to do when they eventually get to these positions that they're saying they're getting. Because I really haven't seen or heard any governor come to say, okay, when I become president, this is my plan, this is what I'm going to do, or look at what I have done and this is what I'm going to do. Maybe that's what was thought, because they have nothing to show?
Yeah, because they don't have any plan. The plan is to get there and then get access to state resources and then do as you like. Because the first thing that they do after being elected is to say that all these promises that people were making up and down,
we're not theirs.
I was not responsible for it. So how do you justify things like that? Honestly, it's very bad. Very bad for the government.
Before we let you go, I would like you to react on one more story, and this is coming from the Nigeria. It has quite a number of stories on its front page. A number of them we have had the opportunity to review in the course of our conversation with our guest analyst. But just this one, 10 million Nigerian girls out of school, says UNICEF. 10 million in addition to those ones that have now been stopped from going to school because it appears that in the Northwest particularly, that the schools are the most dangerous places you could have your kids. What does this portend for this country as your parting words for us this morning?
Well, I think to start with, the number must be much higher than that. But I know UNICEF, they rely on the data that they are able to gather. But unless we educate women, I think we should forget about eradicating poverty. Because most of these little things that happen in the community, the women are actually responsible. You know, if you want maybe to barb your head, you go to your mother, not your father. So many little things. So without empowering women, honestly, we should forget about anything poverty eradication. And how do you empower the women? By getting them educated, you know, by giving them all the opportunities that they can, you know, soar higher, because they also have the capacity, they also have the capability to do exactly what most of the men we have in position of governance are actually doing. So, like I said, without empowering our women, without educating them, we should forget about any poverty eradication.
What a fitting way to bring this conversation to a close. It's been a moment of deep reflection, if you like, from editor and boss. And in journalism, once a boss, always a boss. We wish you well for your remaining endeavors as you go about your activities. Amidst the scarcity, I hope you have some fuel to drive around town, drive around town in Abuja. He has said it all, the need for us to preserve and educate our women, and especially, you know, listening with the fact that they've got the capacity to achieve their highest potentials with the right kind of education, something the government should take very serious as a word on a marble coming from Nasri Lawa. We thank you very much for sparing time to be with us in the studio.